I'm delighted to welcome today Sabrina Ben Salmi, who is a most amazing lady. I'm just going to read some notes here because there's too many to just do a one-line introduction. So, Sabrina, you have been on media, multimedia, television, radio, goodness knows what, in publishing. You talk about parenting, dyslexic, home education. You're multi-award winning, you're multi-published. You've got a gig going on with Brunel University in London. You were voted the number 2 in the top 50 most inspirational black women in 2019. So, goodness me, what do we talk about? So much. Where do we start?
Well, firstly, starting with thanking you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you. And, I'm just Sabrina. I'm not someone who believes in labels, to be honest. I've been told that's what we need to carry around with us as ticket openers to doors around the world. But I'm just Sabrina.
Well, welcome, Sabrina. Lovely to have you on the podcast. And let's start with the fact that you're a mother of 5. I mean, that in itself deserves a medal.
I was like, Mum, you didn't tell me how it works. Yeah, so I am only child of my mother, and they tend to say that's the syndrome of only children. They start off one and they want to multiply. So that's very much my basic story. I remember telling my mum to kidnap babies. I didn't know the concept of that wasn't right. And I always wanted to go home with a brother or sister to play with, and we didn't quite get there. So when I became of age, I decided to populate the world myself.
So how many? Sorry, we know it's 5, but what are the age range between them?
Yeah, so you have Lachey, she's 21, the eldest. I have Trayshawn, he's 17. I have Yasmin, 14. Paolo has literally just turned 13 over the weekend, so wish me luck. A lot of teenagers in the house. Huh? And I've got little Mia, who's 8 now.
Wonderful. So 8 through to 21, crikey, that's a challenge. And not only is it challenging having 5 children in the house at all of those ages, but you also home educate them. So what are you playing at? I mean, that's this mad. You're bonkers.
Oh, Elaine, you did not prepare me for how funny you are. Let's just say I'm laughing now, but I didn't laugh at the time. So in all seriousness, my eldest one, who's now 21, back when she was around 8, 9, she had to be taken out of school as an emergency. It's as simple as that. I was going back and forth with letters, writing to head teachers, writing to governors. And I don't know if a parent can relate to how I felt at the time, where you're performing all these actions, but they seem to be fulfilling nothing. I was going around in circles. I felt like it was falling on deaf ears. And all the while I could see my child slowly slipping away. She was a bright, bubbly child full of smiles. And she became a very withdrawn, shy, walking on eggshells, apologized for everything. And I was thinking, I've always known she's polite, but there was something different. It would be the slightest thing. It would be sorry. Oh, sorry, Mum. I'm thinking, what's going on with my child? I sat her down. And as a parent, you can relate to those moments where you're just speechless. And when I started to find out what was going on behind closed doors at school, and I saw my child slipping away, I said, I just need to take her out. So I had to home edge. Then that lasted about 1.5 years. We had to wait for another school in Redbridge. Unfortunately, it took a long while. But that was really what started our journey as a family. I started to take her along to events with me while I was learning to heal, train, learn about business. And she sat there in the corner. I would bribe her, I'm going to buy you an ice cream. Just be quiet for mummy. So it was very much forced upon me, unfortunately. I had no preparation. I was as scared as anything because I knew nothing, right? It's the most scary thing to home ed a child when you don't know what the process is. You don't know what to expect. You've got a meeting with the local authority. I was just on edge. Someone's coming to determine whether I'm a good mother or not, whether I'm doing it right. And they're coming into my home, the most sacred essence for a family. And then I started educating the other 4 children in 2019. And unfortunately, it was as a result of just being tired and burnt out. My children went through horrific bullying experiences, and I had nothing in place. All I did is surrender. I just really had to have faith, knowing that I can deal with whatever comes my way as home ed journey, but I wasn't willing to risk my children losing their essence of who they are through what they were going through at school.
It's so important, isn't it, to follow your intuition, which is basically what you're saying that you did. You followed your intuition with your first child and the rest of them.
Absolutely, 100%.
So while we're on the topic of home ed, what are your top tips?
Oh, wow. So, interestingly enough, we home ed, and because we were entrepreneurial, we had a bit like what you said, just following intuition. I had an intuitive awakening. And I think one of the top tips is listen to your intuition, follow that. That really led me to go to Chelsea. We have like a desk space that the kids showcase their books. And it's a place for entrepreneurs to connect. And we attended that about 2 weeks after we started our home education journey. And that led to us connecting up with Brunel University, which actually led to Amir, my youngest, becoming their youngest ever honorary STEM ambassador. Brunel funds all 5 of my children for their master classes. They've done engineering masterclass, computer science, you name it, on and on. We're actually gearing up for the law. And the reason I'm telling you this is that when we follow our intuition, it really leads us onto a pathway that's beyond our wildest dreams. Like I said, I was not prepared for home education. I had nothing in place. I just wanted to safeguard my children. But what that meant is that for the first time in history, Brunel University worked with a homeschool family, and then we went on to get them to fund homeschool programs. So 2020, we got 20 funded places for 20 homeschool families. And I felt that was amazing, that just by me following my intuition, it led to so much more. So first on the list as a tip, definitely listen to your intuition. Don't second guess it. As a mother, we have this innate ability to be intuitive when it comes to our family. Never second guess it, never push it away. Act on your intuition. I think the second thing is, this is why I really wrote the book, find out what are the requirements. Make sure that you home ed according to where you are. Depending on where you are in the world, it's different, but also different parts in the UK, there are different requirements that you have to fulfill. And I know recently, because of the recent lockdown, lots of rules have changed. So always call up your local authority and just speak to someone in education, just get an idea of what are the prerequisites and what are the do's and don'ts when going into home ed. Know what you're going into. I think realizing that home education, the home ed journey is not for everybody. Don't be pressured into, oh wow, everyone's doing this, so I have to X. There are so many different variations of home education. Find out what's suitable for you and be realistic. For us as a family, I didn't have support from my husband. He wasn't always very emotionally available, so I didn't have that support I needed. Also, he worked in the day. My mum, she's always on hand, she supports, but it's being realistic of where you are and what works for you. What works for us won't work for everyone. We are an entrepreneurial family. It was brilliant for us. We went up and down the country. I was able to get them mentors, take them to classes. A lot of my home ed was funded. And it brings me on to the next tip. Financially, what do you have as a budget to actually support you through this home ed journey? The reality is that home ed can be easy for some and not so easy for others, but there's always ways around it. And this is why I wrote the book on it, is that, can you afford tuition? Can you afford classes, extracurriculum activities? If you can't, how can you exchange and barter to actually gain access to this? And this is something that I really work with families on. But be true to yourself. And first and foremost, I would say, apart from all the tips I've shared, what support do you need? When it comes to home ed, there's so much emphasis on what does my child need, running up and down. You become like a road runner or a taxi driver. And with all due respect, I know we love our children, but without you, they have nothing. Who's going to be there if you burn out? So most importantly, get yourself some sort of support system. You need to connect with adults. You need to be able to have someone to talk to. So there are a host of amazing home ed groups. Join some groups before you take the leap so you feel supported by adults.
That's a really great advice. And you've mentioned a book, Sabrina. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so and the book's called #Homeschooling, and it basically talks about transitioning from state school to homeschool. So in the book, I discuss everything. I mean, absolutely everything: the pain, the guilt, the stress, the confusion that parents go through, and it's normal. I talk to you about my journey. I talk about the steps, the legal aspects that you have to be mindful of, because there's certain things that you do need to be mindful of, because we all have different requirements in our families. Some people have SEN children. A lot of people with SEN children don't realize that they can also homeschool. So there's lots of support. So this book really talks about our journey, that gives you some practical hands-on tips. We've got templates in there, and we've got a website that I actually utilize to help as my saving grace to say, okay, who do I call when I need someone to talk to? And I think sometimes in our journey, it's very easy to share the bits that look pretty, but the book was really purposeful in that I was a mum that had no clue about what I was doing. Yes, I homeschooled 10 years ago, but like I said, it was like shock, horror, my child's being bullied. But the second time round, I was more prepared. I spoke to the local authority. I understood what I needed to do, what was kind of optional. And when you have that support system, I joined the home ed group. So I had people to talk to. So they said to me, oh, you don't have to do this, but you should do this. And it was such a relief and a weight off my shoulders. So the book really gives you a real account of our personal journey, but also the reality of what we faced, and me not having to know or have it all together. I had one tutor. We had a tutor in the family for about 10 years that always taught my kids English. But I had no maths, I had no science, I had nothing else in place. And it was so funny. When we met Brunel, I was just like, well, I would love my children to do a GCSE as opposed to an IGCSE. I didn't know what was coming now. Obviously, things have changed. But I just wanted them to use their Bunsen burner. You know, I wanted them to have some practical hands-on so they could do that exam. And you get so much more. So it's really a comical book about our journey. But the reality of, you know, I was confused. I know what it feels to be where you are. And I'm just going to share aspects of my journey in that book, with the whole essence, to give you some support and a realistic approach to what it's like to transition.
Fabulous. So that's #homeschooling. So presumably it's on Amazon and all usual
That's right.
places. Fabulous.
Absolutely.
So, mother of 5, home educating, written a book, and you're also dyslexic.
Yes, I am. And it's interesting because I don't know if you can relate, or if you're a parent and listening to this, that sometimes when someone says, what's the recipe for X, Y, or Z? You go, well, I don't really know the measurements. I've just learned how to do that, right? And I think that's the best way to describe my neurodiversity, because I didn't find out that I was dyslexic until I was at university. But I always knew something was different by the way I interacted. I had lots of trouble going through school, and very frustrated, very confused about people saying, you know, you were dunce and you didn't understand. And I did understand. I just did things a bit differently. So diagnosis really helped me to understand how what my learning curve was and how I absorbed information, because there are so many different profiles of dyslexia. So mine was related to a childhood operation that I had. So I have sort of like trauma-induced dyslexia. I had a lot of oxygen starved to the brain. They said that if I survived 24 hours, I'd most likely be a cabbage or brain dead to some extent. So what happened for me is that I went about my life, and I'm really furious as I would read a page, and as soon as I turned to the next page, I forget it. And it was so hard for me. I mean, incredibly hard. Like, my peers would run through books, but I would have read my book 4 times and only remembered some. So dyslexia was a very painful transition. But what I realized is that it was also the perception that I had of dyslexia and the perception that the world pointed at me with. So we could all imagine, if I said to you to reenact an elderly person, we tend to reach for our back and say, oh, we can't walk. And I think the profile actually made me feel that I could not do. So while I was at university, I was very determined that I wasn't going to become my label. I wanted my label to be something that I can liberate other people with. So you can understand that many people that have dyslexic profiles, they actually have high IQs. There are so many different things that we don't know about our spectrums. And what it really done is that I went about my life trying to hide it away from the world because I felt embarrassed. I felt as soon as I told someone I'm dyslexic, they'd say, oh, you can't read, you can't write, which I can. I just have different struggles to other people. I had a serious speech impediment. Sometimes you hear it every now and again. But what it really done for me eventually is that I was like, wow. And my kids said, Mum, you've got dyslexia. And I thought, isn't it interesting that I don't speak about it as much? I've learned to live with it. I've learned how to bake the cake without understanding the measurements, so I can't share it with others. And I felt that it was actually quite selfish for me to actually keep that inside and not be a mirror for other people to see what's possible, despite what they may or may not have. So as of this year, actually, I'm very proud to say that I won an award for the Best Dyslexic Business of the Year award, which I felt was so amazing. And it's just for me, coming as I am, the business that we've built together as a family was what we were awarded it for. And that really struck me. So now I'm now more public about the dyslexic profile that I have. I now share, I now say, well, actually, you know, this is what I have. I now in the process of going to go into schools and talk to other young people and be that person that I really wish that I had when I was growing up.
Mm. It's really interesting because I think if I was at school today, I would end up with having so many labels. A lot of what you've described is me as well. I'm 65 now, so I'm not worried about what anybody thinks or does, or I just do stuff, follow my intuition, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But so that's the way life is. But it sometimes it's helpful to have labels. Other times it's not helpful. I'm in the health arena now after doing various other things throughout my life, but I find the same thing with health and well-being. If we hide behind a label, we're not our true selves. We're not being authentic, and if we're not being authentic, that makes a health condition even worse. So I've over the last 25 years, I've specialised in something called DISC behavioural profiling. I don't know if you've come across that. I'll have to talk to you separately about that. But basically, it's a form of personality profiling which goes back to Hippocrates in 400 BC. And Hippocrates was a doctor, and he identified the 4 humours, which in modern parlance is the 4 different key personality styles. Some people say there's 5, but traditionally there's been 4 styles with lots of blends and sub-blends. And had my teachers known, I used to bunk off school left, right and centre because I thought the whole thing was stupid, and I couldn't, like you, I couldn't read a page or even half a page and I've forgotten the previous sentence. And so I've learned to do things my way as I've gone along. So maybe I would have had a label if I but anyway, there we go. So so following your intuition, doing things your way, doing things that suit your family, your budget and all the rest of it, they're all really key things that we should all be doing. Yet there's so much pressure, isn't there, out there? So much pressure on individuals, young people. You've got to be the biggest, the best, the fastest. Or it's the other end of the scale where actually, no, it's not good to shine, because if you shine, then that's your ego. So no wonder there's such confusion, and there's the mental health piece that's going on today, which nobody ever spoke about mental health. We just got on with life and that's it. So we've kind of gone from one extreme to the other, haven't we?
Absolutely. I really love what you shared. You shared so many golden nuggets there. And it's interesting that one thing that really jumped out for us, myself, is that we're no longer allowed to choose. We're no longer allowed to say, I like vanilla ice cream and I don't like mint chocolate chip, but it doesn't mean I want to knock your ice cream over. And I think it's quite interesting when we compare today's society to when we grew up. And I've become my mum. It's funny, we become our grandparents, because I know when I'm speaking to my kids, I hear their voices through me. You don't want to do that, young lady. And I remember being spoken to and just going, oh, you're older and I don't understand. But actually, it's so important that we have those intergenerational conversations, because one of the things I'm very concerned of is the way life is today. Everything is instant gratification. Everything is very superficial. And as a parent, and I'm only speaking about my journey and people that I interact with, some of our biggest challenges is actually raising children in a world that no longer supports those 4 values: respect, honesty, transparency. when we grew up, we would go to school and it would be echoed. When we grew up, we'd be walking down the street. I grew up in East London, so it was a bit of Crush Street Market and Roman Road Market. If anyone knows the East End, you would go out and so go ahead.
I was brought up there as well.
Oh, so you understand.
Well, Chinkford,
yeah.
Chinkford was Essex, and then it changed to East London, so it's the last outpost of East London. So yeah, all of that, yeah.
So you totally understand where I'm going.
Yes,
and it was pie and mash. You know, I remember we used to go to lunch, like down the Chris Street Market, to get our pie and mash. And the aspect that I'm talking about is that right now we have serious issues at hand. And we have so many serious issues because there's so much imbalance, there's so much pressure. You can't have imbalanced pressure and these young children growing up in so much of that. It's going to cause serious mental health issues going forward. And I must say that the biggest challenge for me was trying to take away the lime scale from my children of what the world was telling them they expected. And it was pretty much my journey. I remember coming home and I said, I have to go deeper. Once upon a time, parents didn't have to, but I had to. I apologize to my children. I say thank you if they do something for me. I want them to understand the human components in life, that's priceless. I always say to my kids, I couldn't care less about what you achieve if you're not good people. And I really mean this to this very day, is that how you treat people is your real currency, not what you've got. And we use things and cherish people, not the other way around. And some of my biggest challenges was really to just say, who are you? And I'm going to tell you who I am. I remember saying to my children, my imperfection is my perfection, and that's all I've got to offer. Because sometimes, exactly what you said, we have so much pressures. And we were having this conversation earlier that as a woman, we're often taught by everybody around us that we need to be everything to everyone. But the question I had to ask myself is, who am I to myself? And I asked you also the same question. I got to 31 and I realized that I was living my life for everybody else and I hadn't lived a single day for me. And that hurt to the core.
And that is a key age, because I found I woke up when I was about 34. And as I say, I'm 65 now, so it's been, life is a journey and all that sort of cheesy things, but it's true. And as we age, as we mature, as we see things through our parents and our grandparents' lenses, and in the kind of ancestral thing, we weren't a family that ever spoke, so there was no conversation. And my dad died when he was only 46 and I was barely 19. So I didn't have those grown-up conversations with my parents, and it was, well, I did with my mother later on. But you're right to be including your children in all of these, warts and all kind of conversations, because they'll all be individual people. They'll all have different personality characteristics, and I'm sure it's not all honey and roses in the house every day of the week. But that's life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Do you know what I love what you just shared? And if it's okay for me to just touch on this, is that the conversations. I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s, and it was very much a case that children were seen and not heard. I remember visiting my grandmother's home, and pretty much the living room was for guests. And I remember sitting outside the living room with cousins and, just waiting for the guests to come around. That's where all the sweets are. That's where all the treats are, right? You would never be involved in adult conversation. And I don't know how different it is for you, but it's quite interesting where I remember, so it was a West Indian household. So it was very much that this is big people's conversation. It's not, you wasn't allowed to comment, you wasn't allowed to say nothing. So you're just constantly observing. You never really have the answers. And it was quite funny that when I became a mother, it reminded me that I was in a GP's office to register for the first time, and my baby. And I remember them taking a history, right? And I remember there's so much, because of that very thing, what you said. There were people that had conditions in our family, and the doctor was asking me, tell me the history of your dad or your grandma. I was like, I have no idea, because we didn't have those conversations. And it's so profound what you're saying, that because of that upbringing, it means to the other end of the Richter scale, and I've kind of gone a bit over the top and sharing everything. And sometimes I was going, Mum, they're not old enough for that. But it was this avalanche of wanting to include them because I felt so excluded. And it's so interesting how, the intergenerational conversation taking place shapes us today. But I love what you said, because I think as parents, we owe it to them. I remember having so many gaps, you know, seeing my mother stressed, and it was just the way she was raised. She wouldn't discuss it with me, but I tell my kids, you know, it's okay to cry. And, you know, mum's a bit stressed right now, or mummy's happy. They get to see the array of my emotions, so they understand that they also have an array of emotion.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We could talk for hours on this, absolutely hours. So these awards that you've had, you've won quite a few different awards, and excuse me, you refer to yourself as an entrepreneurial family and family
Yeah.
business. So what exactly do you mean by that?
So it's interesting. So one of the things about the way I think, I actually do not connect very well with labels. I realize that they are keys to open up other opportunities, and I utilize them to leverage my message to inspire more people. But this is the language that people understand. So the entrepreneurial family comes back to the messaging. You know, as a family, one of our core messaging is that we want families to see that we can work together as a team. Each family member can be an intricate, unique puzzle piece to a bigger picture. And a bit like what we were discussing about having those gaps in our childhood or upbringing or young adulthood made me start thinking about, why wouldn't I not integrate my children into the family dynamics? After all, everything I do is for them to inherit. So why can't we build this together? So we have this, pretty much have this family ethos that we can go around the world and plant a tree in any forest, but we also need to be populating in our own forest. And funny enough, we've actually started our own family forest out in Tanzania. So we plant seeds as a family. And I think it's so important that we understand that as family, what's our permaculture? How do we impact others? How do we actively choose a brand? Like, we have family meetings, and we're not a perfect family. We just do things, and we are an average family. We're saying, how can we take things to the next level? How can we preserve and create a legacy together that goes on for generations to come? So the entrepreneurial family really comes from the aspect of teaching your children life skills that will last a lifetime, that we hand down from generation to generation, but also ownership. So my kids have their own publishing platforms, they have their own brands, they understand, you know, how to be advocates, they're brand ambassadors. And Paolo has spoken for the UN Assembly. He is an actual official climate activist. Actually, he's planted 10,000 trees out in Tanzania. That's what really sparked our family to plant our own forest. And he's also written a book series called Tree Troops, and he has his Tree Troops forest out in Haiti. And the reason we say entrepreneurial family, for us as a family, entrepreneurship purely means creativity. And we all have creativity, right? We all have something that we can teach someone else. So Lachey is very much heavily involved in the Korean K-World. She's been awarded an award from the First Lady of Korea and received a host of different awards in her journey, maybe over 14 awards by now. And she's into videography, photography, and she also runs Regan Hillier's youth element of her establishment. Trey Sean's very much into finances. He's done his TED Talk. He's a very proud Harrovian. He's studying his A-levels at Harrow. Yasmin is all about love, and they each have their own brands. Lachey is Stepping Stones, Trey Sean is Influencer, Yasmin is The Choice Is Yours, Paolo is The Adventurer, and that's the publishing houses as well. And Amir has I Am Publishing, and Amir's all about affirmations and STEM, being a STEM ambassador for Brunel. So the entrepreneurial family is really that we all listen to each other, we all come together, and more importantly, we're all on the same page. Some of the biggest struggles I've seen in families that come to us is that they love each other, but they don't always understand each other. They can't always be in each other's company and understand how to be themselves. When you meet my children, anyone will understand straight away, my children are all very different. Why would I want them to be the same? But in their difference, they can contribute to the families in a very rich and amazing way. And that's really the message that we put out there, is that in our difference, that's what brings us together, because at the end of the day, we're all connected. So we can be connected in a negative way where we can bring down each other's health, or we can be connected in a positive way where we can add to our longevity together.
So what you just said is just fits so well with the disc profiling that I do, because I teach all the time. We need to know ourselves, what our behavioural strengths are, how we differ to other people, and how the emotional intelligence piece fits together. So it's not, oh, you're not very good at this, go out and go on a course. I get really frustrated when I spent some time in corporate. I managed a team of over 200 staff, and you get the directors coming into me saying that, oh, this course and that course. Well, let's look at the actual fundamental behaviours of the individual, and let's work to their strength, and let's not try and make them into something that they're not. They need to be, we all need to be authentic and true to ourselves. And on the disc profiling tool that I've actually had I've got my own tool created, which is just so awesome. It's taken me 20 odd years. I've been paying license for somebody else, and now I've got my own tool, which is awesome, which I will share with you separately. But it's the differences that make life interesting. It's the differences that can also cause problems if we don't recognise what they are and we can't work with them. So we're talking the same language here, definitely.
Oh my God, you get me so excited. I'm trying to keep myself quiet. Oh, wow, that is beautiful. What you've just shared touched my heart so deeply. Half of the problem is that we're taught our entire lives to suppress who we really are.
Yeah.
And we go throughout our journey and get to our 30s and realise, I'm done with this. We throw it all in and we go, finally, I'm taking off this coat. I'm going to put on my own coat. And that's exactly what describes my message. Like, I really love what you shared, because I looked at my children and I said, I don't want them to get to 30 and then go, okay, I'm going to live my life. I want them to be who they are throughout their lives. My children know who they are, what they can and can't do, and they realize it's a unique piece to the puzzle. They don't have to be that next piece, because that next piece is a connecting factor to their journey of connecting with amazing people around the world. Because I love what you said about the courses. What's the point sending a person that is your kinesthetic love buddy, team building person on a course to sit down and do numbers if they have no interest about it? And we do that far too long. We keep saying, oh, that's a rough edge, let's smooth it out. And what we're actually doing is taking away that unique connective piece that's supposed to bring someone else. If we were meant to do it on our own, do you really think there'll be over 8 billion people on this planet and we're supposed to be everything to ourselves? Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's total madness, isn't it? Total madness. Well, we could talk forever and a day, Sabrina. It's been absolute joy speaking with you, listening to you, and hearing your inspiring tinsy bits of your inspiring story and your wonderful family. So how do people get hold of you?
So my name's Sabrina Ben Salmi, and we have a team email. So it's info@dreamandbigtogether.com, or you can just do a Google search, because we're on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I guess we're on most of the social media platforms, and the team are brilliant. So if there's something that's quite personal, you need to get in touch with us. One of us is there. We are a real family, just having extraordinary experiences. And the reason I'm saying they're extraordinary is because it's not because of us. This is an invitation to people to say, come and have some fun with us. There's an amazing aspect. Yes, life is hard. The reality is we have the good, the bad, and the ugly too. We just address them differently to what we're used to.
Absolutely, well said, that lady. So can you spell the surname, because not everybody's going to be watching this, some may be listening to this interview.
So my surname is Ben Salmi, so it's spelled B-E-N, N for Norman, space, no hyphen, S for sugar, A-L, M for mother, I for India. There is a website that we have actually called www.lifeaccordingtolashai.com, and Lashai is spelled L-A-S-H-A-I, and we've got a family page there that basically just has the profiles of each member of the family.
Wonderful, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing. I can't wait for us to have a conversation about all the amazing golden nuggets that you shared today. Thank you so much.